Hello, everyone, and welcome to my latest live stream. First of all, can I be heard? That is the most important question. Or at least the most important question to me. Hello out there. Am I audible? Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome to my second live stream in a row this weekend, and this one is kind of adhering to my more typical format, and that is to say, the Discord folks are the ones who participate in the discussion. Everybody is welcome to watch. I would love it if people would watch. We always have a very lively discussion. If you wish to be part of it, there's in just about every live stream I do, there's instructions on how to be a part of it. It's $3 a month is the minimum charge, 75 cents per. So feel free to participate. So let's get that. And Frambrick wants to make sure to for me to say, and being a Patreon is awesome because we get to ask questions. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm the one who feels honored, though, let me tell you, that this many people, I've got over 300 Patreon supporters at this point, and that so many people feel that engaged with what I do to contribute to the success of this channel. I never thought that that would happen. So thank you so much for that. Okay, let's move on. We voted on the topic, and it turned out to be what is the first practical application that we should use for the Starship. Before I go any further, though, I need to issue an apology to those who are going to be watching this after it is recorded. Right now, we have no ads. However, my most recent videos have not gone over very well, probably because they've been about unusual topics like Martian pandemics and things like that, things that haven't really attracted a lot of viewers. The channel's struggling a bit, so unfortunately, I need to monetize this after the live stream. So please accept my apologies. Once I bounce back, I will no longer do that. And I'm only going to put in one ad every 10 minutes. So it's not like you're going to be bombarded with nonstop ads or anything like that. But still, I just wanted to apologize. So the first practical application of the Starship, that's something that is a really big deal. We talk about having to master orbital refueling in order to use the Starship, but that actually isn't really the case. We can use the Starship for a lot of things before we master orbital refueling. As a matter of fact, and by the way, I think we will get orbital refueling down, but even if we never mastered it, the Starship would still have incredible practical applications for the exploration of the solar system. So that all being the case, question and answers, feel free to start making your contributions. Start sending to cargo to Mars. No if, ands, or buts, says N2. And I have to say that is a big one. It does require that we master the concept of orbital refueling. So we have to get that down before we start sending anything to Mars. Orbital refueling is going to be a necessity. But still, starting to get things to Mars, starting to master the extremely difficult challenge, in my opinion, of landing 100-ton ship and 100 tons worth of payload on the Martian surface with such an incredibly thin atmosphere is going to be a massive challenge, and we need to start tackling that as early as possible. So yeah, I do think that that's definitely something that we should be doing right off the bat. And once we have it down, then we can start, sending more equipment, more habitation domes, more automated systems that allows us to build structures on the surface, greenhouses or aquaponics, aeroponics, all the different systems that are going to be necessary in order to support even a small colony. Okay, first practical application should be more Starlink launches. Yes, that's something I thought of as well. And bear with me, I am still minus my glasses. I have no idea where they disappeared to after years of having the same glasses. Looks like I'm going to have to replace them. But yeah, at 60 on the Falcon 9, you could put 400 of them on the Starship. Means that we can start getting payback on Starlink really quickly. And that does not require orbital refueling. So that would be a really good idea and would allow SpaceX to start collecting a substantial amount of money. Now, one thing that I'm really delighted about is the fact that now that Elon Musk has become the wealthiest person on the planet, at least in terms of his stock and all that sort of thing, he right away made a statement that he was going to start liquidating a lot of his personal possessions and start funneling that money into establishing a colony on Mars. That's a commitment that no other billionaire on this planet has made. The moment he became the richest guy on the planet, that's what he wanted everybody to know that he was going to be doing with his millions. And that's an amazing thing. It shows just how committed he is to what he believes in. At least I think that he's for real about this. I think he's that committed because keep in mind, he almost bankrupted himself starting SpaceX in the first place. He could have sold PayPal, got himself a mansion in the hills and just rested on his laurels for the rest of his life. But that's not what he did. He nearly bankrupted himself trying to build SpaceX. So that is something else. Okay, we've got him coming in like crazy. So this is a good thing. Good thing, definitely. A test run to the moon or Venus, practiced refueling techniques. The NASA would definitely agree with you on that. Their plan is to go to the moon and Venus first before we go to Mars because those two targets are easier. And yeah, a test run to the moon would be a great idea. The Dear Moon mission. I made a video about that and how we could accomplish that without even having the Starship being human rated. That was actually a suggestion from Framrick, one of my supporters. So in any event, yeah, that's a good one too. Cleaning up space junk. Yep, that's something Ouija Lego that they have suggested for use of the Starship. Once again, does not require orbital refueling. So there's lots of things that Starship can do before we get the tanker orbital refueling concept down. All right. Starship opens up low Earth orbit to orbital construction. Yes, due to the payload per vehicle, Starship should be primarily used for more grand planet ships. Yeah. If we're talking about orbital construction, space stations, that sort of thing, we certainly have with the Starship, we have the capability to start putting up lots of private space stations. So that's a big one as well. And just a little spoiler, I'm taking these ideas and I'm going to be putting them into a video. I'm going to take what I'd regard as the top 10. I'm going to say the top 10 first things that the Starship should be used for. And they may not be what you think is going to be kind of the theme of the video. So I don't know how quickly I'm going to be able to get that done, but that's something I'm going to be doing. And hopefully that's going to go over well. Excuse me, enjoying coffee out of a mug I actually like now for a change. And I'm gonna have all this stuff framed here in the next few days. Good morning, Kiwi Gurn. I appreciate you showing up. Yes, well, I'm glad that it is a nice drive, listen rather, for a drive to work. Once again, thanks so much for showing up. Ali D says start sending fuel units to Mars, even solid fuel. That's a very interesting idea. I think that fuel is going to be a very important thing for a lot of purposes on Mars, not just coming back to Earth, but also possibly, once you land on Mars, fueling expeditions to Phobos, Deimos, the asteroid belt, all of those sorts of things, would be more easily facilitated if we had fuel or fuel manufacturing plants on Mars as early as possible. Yeah, it's not just about coming back here, it's about going further and also building up the logistics of a Martian colony. All of that is going to require fuel, solar panels, etc. Okay, Leon. Hello, Leon. Since Starship has huge cargo space, single launch commercial space stations would be a practical and definitely profitable use. I couldn't agree with you more. There are some very substantial single launch space stations that could be put up. I mean, look at the size of Skylab, for example. I mean, that was just a one stage of the Saturn V with a few add-ons. So you could do exactly the same thing with Starship. So you could start putting up small commercial stations. And I think that there's definitely going to be commercial uses for these things. As I've mentioned a number of times before, the astronauts on the ISS have been overworked for so many years because they have to maintain the station as well as carry on all the experiments. They have a huge backlog of scientific experiments because they have to maintain the doggone thing too. Now that they have more crew members, that helps. But for so many years, they haven't been able to do that. And I think that the more private space stations we put up, the more customers that they're going to have. And the Starship will be able to put them up very inexpensively if we're talking $2 million per 100 tons, or if they want to make 100% profit, $4 million for 100 tons. That's still nothing. That's dirt cheap compared to what things used to be, what they are right now. I think it should become a part of space tourism. Yeah, those windows are technically possible. They are technically possible. Get people to take down our borders while viewing the planet as a biosphere. Yes, trips to either to around the moon, to the moon, depending on the level that you pay. Yeah, space tourism on the Starship could be an amazing thing, something shared by a large number of people. Obviously, Dear Moon is going to be the first example of that. And I think that it's going to be a beautiful thing. And the idea of having artists, painters, musicians, that sort of thing, communicating their experiences to people on Earth in ways that few other people can. Artists can express an experience better than so many other people can. I think that that's going to be something that's really going to change space tourism and the way people look at space. So, yeah, Dear Moon, we got to get that going as soon as we can. Linking 2 or 3 starships in orbit, says Framrick, with deployable solar panels, full life support, plus kitted out for 20 or 30 crew, instantly creates a new space station. Keep one starship for emergency re-entry. That's a very interesting idea. My position, as a lot of you know, those of you who've been watching my channel for a long time, is to not use the Starship for a space station because it's then no longer a reusable vehicle. You're kind of permanently putting it in orbit, and then it loses its reusability, which is its main strength. But at the same time, you could certainly do it. You could certainly do it, and you could build a huge space station that way for pretty dirt cheap. And then you can, over time, rip out the engines, rip out the fuel tanks, that sort of thing, and make the station even bigger. So, except for the Starship for emergency reentry, of course. Of course, you would have to also make sure that it stayed fueled up on a regular basis for the emergency reentry. You'd probably have propellant boil off on a regular basis unless you could find a way to put up a sun shield, better insulation on that one Starship, that sort of thing, to make sure that it was able to maintain its fuel over the long term. Starlink, but for Mars and the moon. Yeah, I think that that's definitely going to be an important thing that we put in place for Mars, especially, but for the moon too, for that matter. We're going to our first colony on the moon is going to be very difficult to communicate with directly from Earth. As a matter of fact, pretty much impossible. It's going to require a communications relay, which the Lunar Gateway is going to serve as for a lot of its time, but still it's not going to be able to provide full coverage. So that's going to be an important thing. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, says Cyclonic. So thank you very much. I appreciate you mentioning that. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Leon. I appreciate it. Once again, this was it may have been my idea, but it was the viewers who voted on it and made it a reality. So that's definitely a great thing. So okay, let's see here. Bryden Jim Stein, we now have, I guess, is I think that's what you're calling yourself now, or if you are who I think you are. Starship can take up a Starliner and finally get Boeing into the proper orbit. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Yeah, well, yeah, it's pretty much what it might take. Like I say, I'm getting so sick of the Starliner. I really think that once NASA discovered all of those issues, the huge number of issues that the Starliner had, they should have started over from scratch, but they didn't. So they should have started over and gone with Dream Chaser, but they're not going to do that. So anyway, which is a real letdown. Okay, Ouija Lego Starship is going to be a game changer for space. Yes, indeed. The amount of people being able to experience the overview effect can only be a good thing. Yeah, I mean, only a few hundred people have gotten to experience this in human history. We're under 1,000 people who have experienced this, and all the time that NASA, the Roscosmos, everybody else has been in operation, it's still a ridiculously small percentage of the human population that's been able to experience orbit. So yeah, that will change a lot indeed. It's possible to send a nuclear thermal propulsion test drive unit or probe in a Starship with full security, safety, with to the fissionable materials. No risk if there's an abort. Allows us to test nuclear thermal propulsion in space. 100 tons to play with is awesome. Yes, indeed, it is. And nuclear thermal, yeah, I do believe that this is something that needs to be aggressively pursued. The shorter amount of time that human beings need to spend in microgravity and the shorter amount of time that they're exposed to cosmic rays and potential solar storms and that sort of thing, the better. So we absolutely have to do that. And yeah, we did make a video. Cyclonics did. As a matter of fact, he created a lot of the images. One particular image that I use over and over and over again about possible using orbiting solar power, using origami solar panels and such. I use that image constantly. Thank you, Cyclonics, for making it. Because yeah, it's amazing the amount of orbiting solar power that we could create using Starship, and it would be so much more. Well, hello, another space nut. I appreciate you showing up. Thanks so much for coming by. Okay, we have the student 1962. Hook a couple of Starships up, and there's your Mars base. Yes, that has been talked about quite a bit. Maybe how we have to establish ourselves to begin with when we get established on Mars. It really all depends. I mean, there's been a lot of ideas. Well, not just ideas, but practical applications and prototypes of in situ habitat designs, machines that can create habitats using Martian materials. And if they can fit in 100 tons worth of fairing, You can have the Starship transported there, have them build the habitat for us, send the Starship back to Earth, pick up another one, go back, build another habitat. To me, making the maximum use of the Starship's reusability is a better thing. But still, if we want to quickly establish bases on Mars to begin with, then yeah, I'm just using the Starships as a base is certainly a viable option. Start deploying trusses to demonstrate the Gateway Foundation Voyager station, and then attach a few Bigelow modules and spin it. Yeah, I think the Gateway Foundation would be beyond thrilled if something like that were to happen. I am going to try to see if I can secure an interview with them. And by the way, speaking of interviews, I do have an interview scheduled tomorrow with a NASA astrobiologist. I'm going to just leave it at that. But he has some very interesting discoveries that he has made in regards to extraterrestrial life in meteors. And I'm not talking about those Martian ones that we supposedly found back in the 90s. This is much, much more groundbreaking stuff than that. And as I say, he was not only a NASA astrobiologist for many years, but also discovered 3 entirely new types of bacteria during his career. He is credited with the discovery of 3 new species. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And I had a conversation with him day before yesterday. Very intriguing man who's acquainted with Dr. Levin, and who I've maintained a dialogue with actually for several months now since I interviewed him. And if you haven't checked out that interview, please do. It's amazing stuff. So anyway, I can't wait for that. But that's just a little teaser. I'm going to have the interview done and released tomorrow. Okay, let's see here. We got Warhawk. Do you think the stigma against fission reactors in space will dissipate with the growing need for power off planet and on? Well, there's more legislation coming out suggesting that we do start using fission off planet. And so I think that the stigma is already starting to evaporate a bit, Warhawk. But we need to prove that it's viable. Now, I mean, we have used fissionable materials in space a number of times. And so far it's gone pretty well, although the Russians had one particular really embarrassing mistake some time ago. But still, I think that using nuclear power in space is going to be an absolute essential if we really want to explore the solar system beyond Mars, especially if we want any hope of going to the asteroid belt, to Jupiter, to Saturn, that sort of thing. Then we're going to need that kind of power to drive our astronauts out there in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, Tartan, Texas. Hello. I like the idea of flying up Starship unmanned and using Crew Dragon to bring up the crew for the missions. Yes, I like that idea too. I think I released a video about doing that for Dear Moon, that we could get Dear Moon off the ground and orbiting the moon in very short order without having to human rate the Starship. And I think that that should be one of the first uses that a Starship is put towards. A lunar Starship is what we're talking, kind of a tram, a lunar tram. The lunar Starship comes back. The Crew Dragons bring the passengers back down. Then we put more passengers up and have them orbit the moon. After the Dear Moon mission goes by, I think there's going to be a huge demand for that. Another good first use would be to putting multiple fuel depots in low Earth orbit, getting rid of those tanker runs. Absolutely, Leon. I couldn't agree with you more. And that is something that ULA is 100% behind. So collaborating with ULA is definitely got to be something. Got to love Android. Oh my. Interesting. Okay. I'm not sure about that. Another space nut sent me a screenshot. But in any event, anyway, not sure what that image is, but that's because I'm half blind. So what can I say? I'm just happy I can read what I'm reading. Large scale bulk food growing, multi-concept research, space aquaponics testing coupled with space tourism gets my vote too. By the way, nice meteor crater series. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that, Ricker. Unfortunately, my meteor crater episode didn't go over terribly well. I was a little disappointed about it, but at the same time, it isn't what I typically talk about. Anytime I go off track, anytime I talk about, that's why I'm so amazed about how my alien civilizations Proxima Centauri signal, the first one that I released, did so well. I've got like 160,000 views for that thing or something. I don't know how that did so well, because the second one I released, chapter 2, that hasn't done very well at all. It blows my mind. It's like I say, the whole thing with YouTube algorithm, I'll never understand it. I'll never get why it is. All I can say is if I release things that are in line with what I usually release, it usually does well. If I go off track a little bit, doesn't usually do so well, but there are some exceptions. Did I see the Gateway Foundation proposal for a space-based Arecibo replacement? No, I did not, but I would love to interview them about it. It gives me further incentive to check that out. Cyclonic said, not brought up a lot of stuff. Should Starship actively work to compete with the plane industry and make SpaceX crazy amounts of money? Hopefully. The one problem I have with that, Cyclonics, is that the Concorde tried to compete with aviation as well. I mean, it's an exciting concept, but to get the Starship to a point to where it's as safe as commercial air travel, which, by the way, the Concorde was as safe as commercial air travel, obviously, and yet still did not do well financially. I think that they might have a difficult time getting lots and lots of passengers for an Earth to Earth mission. I could be wrong about that, but at the same time, I think that they may find it difficult to compete with commercial air travel and to make it as safe as commercial air travel. But I've been wrong before. So, we have a long ways to go. Let's put it that way, before we start using Starship for human transportation on that regular of a basis. The good thing is that there'll be no suicide dive with that particular concept. The Starship will have plenty of fuel to go up and come back down and do a powered landing without having to do that flip turn. So that would make it a lot safer. So we'll see. We shall see. Elon certainly believes in it. Boeing fine for the. I'm sorry, Boeing fine for the max shoes to the integrity of the company. I am so fine for the max. Yeah, for the integrity. Well, I'll tell you something. I'm not sure if I understood the statement, Tartan, but there is no integrity from Boeing right now. They've demonstrated that they don't have any integrity. That last test that they did, they've admitted so little about what went wrong with it, and they knew everything that went wrong with it way before they announced it, way before they admitted it. And I think that there is an entire possibility that they would have been able to get away with it. By the way, we have a lot of viewers right now. Please please subscribe if you have not done so already. And if you want to participate in things like this in the future, you know how to do it. Go to the description. Just become a Discord supporter. It's only $3 a month. That's pretty cheap to be able to associate with this fine group of people and discuss space and discuss SpaceX and discuss all kinds of other topics besides SpaceX. The space environment is expected to be beneficial, providing the most significant cost of boosting materials into orbit is overcome. Yes, less than $100 per kilogram for the Starship. get an infrastructure established, and profits will follow for the processing of lunar ores, a maglev slingshot to LEO, or near Earth orbit ores, capture and return via the Queen Bee, which is an asteroid mining ship. Yeah, there's so many things. The Starship will change everything when it comes to the exploitation of space. There's so many things that it can do, regardless of whether, when we get to Mars. I mean, there's so many other things that can be done. All right, I'm falling way behind here, but I'm going to keep working at it. Can the Starship be used to retrieve Hubble from space for historic purposes instead of letting it simply become obsolete or the orbit? Yeah, I believe so. I think that the Starship definitely can. I think that the shuttle's cargo bay was capable of deploying Hubble. I don't see any reason why we can't grab the Hubble with the Starship. I think that that would be a very worthwhile use. Ricker says, no silent running repeats, though. Yes, silent running. One of definitely a very, very, very awesome movie that a lot of folks are not familiar with. The idea that the last remaining remnants of Earth's natural environment is sent into space, that we artificially control our environment, pretty much get rid of everything that naturally lives on the planet and put it all into space, and then proceed to destroy almost all of it. It's a tragic movie at the same time, has a little bit of hope, but I'm not going to give away a whole lot besides that. Build humanity's first cycler. Hell yeah, Cyclonics. I like that idea. The whole concept of an ongoing transportation method from here to Mars. And that's something that people don't know about Buzz Aldrin, is how well educated this guy is. He knows what it takes to build something like that. He's the one who came up with this idea, and he is just fantastic at it. Liked, subbed, and patron, says Warhawk, ready to get angry here. Well, thank you so much for that, Warhawk. Framrick says a number of useful products that can potentially be manufactured in space and result in an economic benefit. Powerful options include growth of protein crystals and improved semiconductor wafers. Starship will help develop the infrastructure and lower the cost of production. Yes, indeed. The entire objective of building a huge industry in space is something that we can accomplish with Starship. It's amazing. If you can launch 100 tons for $2 million, or as I say, if they want to make 100% profit, $4 million, or $6 million even, it's still ridiculously cheap to send up that much cargo for that inexpensive. It will change everything, which is why Elon is pushing so damn hard to make this work. Johnny Spacer says, I saw a video that launches a huge space station using super heavy and the Starship tanks as a modified second stage. Yes, I saw that as well. I think that is a very good idea. SpaceX Vision, I think, or who was it? And somebody can remind me on that so I can give them a little plug. But yeah, that was a really neat idea. I'm not going to talk any more about it. Just go and check out the video. It's really cool. Earth to Earth starships will be decades after starships go operational. I agree, Johnny Spacer. I think it's going to be a while before we really have the Starship reliable enough and safe enough to where we can start going, New York to Japan in 30 minutes. I think that's going to be a ways in the future. I could be wrong. Who knows? It's SpaceX has surprised me in the past. I certainly didn't expect the Falcon Heavy to be so successful on its first launch, and it was. So who knows? Who knows? Okay, Bruden62. Okay, enough of what Starship should be used for. Elon likes your channel and gives you control of your own fleet. What do I do with it first? What I do with it first is probably not what most people would do with it first. I would establish what we've already talked about. tons and tons of space-based solar arrays to transmit power back to Earth. We can gather so much energy from space, and Starship can deploy so many of these panels, so many arrays, and we can start beaming the energy back to Earth. At the same time, these panels can also be used to power lasers so that we can zap laser sails up to a relativistic speeds and explore Proxima Centauri, or even, to lesser degrees, and start sending laser sail ships across the solar system, Earth to Mars in a few days instead of, or, a couple weeks instead of 6 months. And also, these lasers you could use these solar panels to power lasers to defend the planet against asteroid collisions. There's so many practical applications of using that kind of system. So yeah, I would say put up massive solar arrays combined with lasers that would be under the control of the United Nations Security Council to make sure that nobody can use it as a weapon, give a kill switch, even give a kill switch to the Chinese, not control of it, just a kill switch, so that if anybody tries to use it for some sort of weapon, you can shut it down. But at the same time, that's what I think it should be used. That if I had my own fleet of starships, that would be my first use of it. Let's take our civilization to a Kardashev level 1 civilization using the Starship. I think that would be an amazing thing. Probably kiss Bezos the finger as the orbit spot. Yeah, I'd probably do that. Probably would. Yeah. I would say so. And once again, I believe in what Jeff Bezos wants to do if he's telling the truth. I really do believe in the idea of taking our heavy industry off planet and putting it into space. I think that's a wonderful idea. I think we should do that as soon as possible. The problem is he's not doing it. He's got all this money. He was, until recently, the richest guy on the planet, and yet he is still yet to put anything in orbit. That continues to make me so pissed off. So, that's something that I just can't get by. Once he actually put it's SpaceX Vision. Okay, that was the name. By the way, I'm sorry I changed the subject there. SpaceX Vision came up with that whole notion of sending up a big space station using a couple of starships. I'm not going to give away anything about the video. Just go and see it because it's a really neat concept. SpaceX Vision, there's a plug for you. I don't even know the guy who runs the channel. So, but a plug for a really good idea. So go check it out and go subscribe. Okay, the elephant in the room. Here we go. Will Starship be co-opted? Reed paid lots of money to deploy more military infrastructure in space. Still complying with treaties, but rods from God, military space stations, more observation satellites. Yeah. And that bothers me, to be honest, because I don't mind the idea of deploying military satellites. The better of a view that we can get of what's going on this planet, especially watching countries like North Korea and things like that, and every move they make, I like those ideas. What I don't like is the whole concept of deploying any kind of weapon in space. Rods from God, the kinetic penetrators can theoretically be as powerful as tactical nuclear weapons without any warning. There'd be no warning whatsoever that one of these things were coming down. And it would be a big incentive on the part of Russia and China, if they knew that we were deploying something like that, to use one of their anti-sat weapons to shoot down a starship, which would undoubtedly start a war. I don't think we need to be starting any wars with Starship. But in terms of monitoring, in terms of surveillance, I like that idea. And I think the money should be put into it. At the same time, the military may already be working on this. They already have a contract with Sierra Nevada to use the Shooting Star, which is a little bitty module, but they want to use it as a mini orbiting space station. What for? They won't say. Are they going to test some sort of small version of the rods from God system on this? They could. The shooting star is capable of carrying rather large pieces of cargo in those modules it has on the outside of it. Perhaps a small rail gun of some kind. Is that what they have in mind? I hope not, but maybe they do. Like I say, lots of money involved with this, and Sierra Nevada has done a fair amount of work with the U.S. military in the past. Okay, Warhawk, watching what Boston Dynamics has done in the last few years, what do I think in terms of automation will be in terms of construction in space rather than hands-on? Yeah, I think that there's more and more automation coming, more robots coming in terms of building things in space. So yeah, I do think that that is going to be part of the future. What I like the most is the idea of automated, and I'm kind of going off topic here, but automated construction of habitats on Mars being controlled by human beings on Phobos. I really think that that's an excellent idea. That means real time control of the machines in question so that you can build these habitats, and in case they have any problems, you have real time control of the machines. Whereas, if you have to wait 15 minutes to get a signal to the robot, it makes things a lot more difficult. But yeah, I do think that what Boston Dynamics is doing in terms of their robots is going to be, a natural part of our building an infrastructure in low Earth orbit and beyond. I think the military says Johnny Spacer will use Starship to move cargo and troops anywhere on Earth in less than half an hour. Yep, that is possible. Even that frightens me a little bit, Johnny, and I'll tell you why. If anybody gets a notion that we can do that, you never can tell where those troops are going to plop down. Are they going to plop down on the Kremlin? Are they going to plop down, on the Politburo, the Chinese Politburo? They may not know, once it goes up with all those troops on board, how do you know where it's going to deploy itself on the planet? Are you going to wait, or are you just going to shoot it down for sake of, especially if there are intense, if relations between us and the Russians and the Chinese are particularly intense, are they going to try to shoot it down? Once again, those sorts of things, I understand, the strategic and tactical advantages of using Starship for a purpose like this. In half an hour, getting a huge number of troops and equipment to a terrorist hotspot or something like that, in the Middle East or Africa or something like that. That's a really good practical use. But the very same thing would allow us to, rapidly deploy troops behind enemy lines to really sensitive areas. Is that going to increase the paranoia of our enemies who have the ability to shoot down a starship? It worries me a little bit. Will it increase the tensions between countries? Now, if we see other nations starting to do something similar, then absolutely we should do it. But I'm not sure if we should be the first ones to do it. That's just my opinion. I don't know if we should make the first move. But like I say, I'm not the one in charge of all this, so who knows what's going to happen. Maybe Starship will be the thing that finally motivates aliens to make first contact. Well, if there is a probe in our solar system that has been watching us for some time, and yeah, maybe they will. Although I tell you, if we start using Starship for military purposes right off the bat, I doubt they will. I think that it would be entirely too easy for us to send a Starship out to whatever probe may be keeping an eye on us and plop it right into the fairing and take it back so we can reverse engineer it, which would defeat its function. So it probably would still stay silent until they're sure about our intentions. Bramick says, when do we get orbiting intelligence bases with women with purple hair and men with brill cream hairdos and top uniforms? Anything could happen in the next half hour. Yeah, who knows? That's a great thing. Maybe that'll be the Tom Cruise movie. Maybe that's what it'll be about. The Starship being used for a military strike somewhere, and he'll be leading us into the teeth of the action while he tries to convert everybody to Dianetics. Okay, Ricker says if Elon is okay with sending his Tesla sports car up, he would also be first in line to recruit Braumeister's astronauts to hydroponically brew various Starship, yay, or even better than Stolly vodka. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Why not? Stuff brewed in space, alcohol made in space. Wow. I think that would sell just on the principle of it. I think there are millions of people that would pay big money for alcohol made in space because it probably would be different. I mean, there would be different aspects to things that are grown in microgravity. Interesting indeed. Johnny Spacer says it's awesome that the two richest people in the world are not just pro space, but bending metal as well. Yeah, it is true. I mean, I would say that Jeff Bezos, regardless of what I might think of him, he is actually doing something about space, and he is, the one of the two richest guys on the planet. So yeah, he does have an intention to do something in space as opposed to ignoring it. So yeah, that's a good thing. I can't take that away from him. He just needs to get on the ball and actually do something. That's just my opinion. Okay. Wow, time has been going by. Yeah, we've only got about, and I'm sorry, since I did two of these, and I've got my son and such, I was only planning on doing an hour for each, and I know we could talk forever about this particular subject. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and we won't, like I said, another 15, 20 minutes or so. I think Bezos being number two now might put more money into space projects as Bruden 62. I sure as hell hope so. I hope that he realizes that Elon Musk is leaving him in the dust, and he needs to do something serious, and he needs to do something fast if he wants to actually be relevant, which he isn't at the moment. Okay, Mr. Gojangles, hello. My first thing would be to develop interplanetary Starlink sats and deploy it into orbit around each of the inner planets in Jupiter. Start now using the Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy Starlink sets. Very interesting idea. Yeah. And really, when it comes down to it, they aren't particularly big, especially if it's only one or two of them. So, yeah, that's a very interesting idea. Start to link, the solar system together. I think that's an awesome idea. Okay, let's see. What else we got here? Tishman. They could send an unmanned starship to Mars, only bringing equipment for the generation of methane and oxygen, fill the tanks, and then fly back to Earth as a test, or maybe to just create a fuel depot. Yeah, we're going to need a fuel depot anyway. So yeah, that should be one of the first missions that we go forward with. I totally agree. Starship could deploy interplanetary probes plus a fueled kick stage. Not sure if anyone has worked out that what the Delta V is better than with a direct launch for Earth, but a 10-ton probe, 90 tons of fuel should do quite well. That's a very interesting idea. Use 90 tons of that for a kick stage, and wow, yeah, it could get a 10-ton probe a long ways, a very long ways. That's a hell of an idea. I never even thought of that. Very cool stuff. By the way, Framrick, I have several of my videos have been based on his ideas. So yeah, I can't come up with some of this stuff. So yeah, and several of my other supporters as well, besides Framrick. So yeah, because of a lot of these Patreon Discord supporters, that's why this channel is where it is, because of some of the awesome ideas that have come from you folks. So thank you very much for that. Starship should help with space junk cleanup. Yes, Cyclonics. That was mentioned kind of at the beginning. But yeah, I agree. It's 100 tons worth of space junk. That's a lot of wrecked satellites. No soda today, by the way. Going over to bottled water. Wasteful, I know, but at the same time, a little bit more healthy anyway. Okay. All right. Let's see. Make sure that I've got this caught up. The refueling tech that would be developed may change satellite development with a satellite that can be refueled and then sent for longer life orbits. Yes, that is true, Brood in 62. That whole concept has actually been around for quite some time. People have been talking about using fuel depots to make satellites, have them with a longer life, send them into higher orbits, that sort of thing. It's one of the first practical uses of fuel depots. Before SpaceX even came around, before it even existed, people were talking about that. And yet we still don't have one fuel depot in orbit, not one. And it pisses me off. Man, does it piss me off. Okay, space beer. Yes, we talked about that. I do think that that would be a really cool thing, and I'd buy one, at least one. I don't care if it was a few $100 or something like that. I'd pay it just to have it. And maybe I'd put it on the shelf or something like that. Oh, no, no problem, guys. Everybody's saying that an hour is great. My family should take priority. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. But at the same time, you guys are important too. My livelihood, my ability to support my kids is based on this channel. So you guys are important too. Okay, Bezos will be the number one richest in the world again after Elon goes to live on Mars. Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. Once Elon accomplishes what he set out to accomplish, once he has a self-sustaining colony on Mars and he's living there, then his priorities are going to change, I believe. I think he's going to be focusing his efforts on making Mars into the wealthiest planet in the solar system instead of Earth. And given the massive amount of riches that are just waiting for us in the asteroid belt, and the fact that it's easier to get to those riches from Mars than it is from Earth, he has the potential to do that. So that may be his next challenge. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Starship can save the ISS. Yeah, I mean, the ISS for the last 10 years has been underused because only 4 crew members, as I said before, they've been spending so much of their time maintaining the space station and not as much time on the science because of what happened with the space shuttle. That sucks. And now we have a full crew, and the potential of making it private and having some private support. Why take the ISS down unless it's no longer technologically viable? Keep it going. I think that until the ISS is falling apart, we should keep it flying, in my opinion. Okay, I can do you a metal bottle made of SN8 stainless steel for a very reasonable price. Is that right? Framrick, let's DM me about that. Okay. Let's see. Ouija Lego asteroid mining will make Mars the gem of the solar system. It will indeed. It will indeed. There's so much wealth out there, so many protoplanets with incredible amounts of raw minerals, or rare minerals rather, and gemstones, and plus all of the water that's going to be necessary, and carbon and such for fuel and that sort of thing, things that are going to be absolutely vital to the exploration of the solar system. And Mars can establish a near monopoly on it because of the gravity issues, because of the 1/3 gravity that they have. That huge advantage is going to allow them to exploit the belt far more easily than anybody from Earth would be able to. Okay, when do we think NASA will human rate the Starship? Will there be private astronauts first on the Starship who sign the acceptable risk waiver earlier than NASA astronauts? Yes, I do believe so. I think it will take time because Starship doesn't have any sort of abort mode or anything like that. I think that's going to bother NASA. I don't think they want to lose more astronauts on something that doesn't have an escape system. So that's going to be an issue. And also, there's FAA issues and other things. There are other government regulations that we're going to need to deal with in terms of putting humans on the Starship. Lots of complications, and we're really going to have to prove that this is a safe vessel before we put people on it. 16 Psyche, here we come. Yes, indeed, Cyclonics, I agree. 16 Psyche, for those of you who don't know, is a protoplanet that we are launching a probe to on a Falcon Heavy, coincidentally enough, next year. And it'll be arriving 2 years after that. And most probably has more rare minerals and wealth on that asteroid than there is in the rest of the solar system. It's an insane amount of very, very vital minerals, platinum and obviously gold and other things that are going to be, and plus stuff that are a lot more rare than that. And the Chinese dominate a lot of the rare minerals and rare earths that are left on the planet. And they have said a number of times that we're kind of running on our last legs when it comes to some of that stuff. Well, it's all out there. It's all out there. We just need to go and get it. C-type asteroids, carbon compounds, and water. Yes, first person gets to those rules, extra Earth space. I agree. C-type asteroids, for those of you who aren't familiar, carbon and water primarily is what they're made out of. Phobos possibly is something at least similar to a C-class asteroid based on its density, but we don't know for certain because we've never bothered to actually land anything on it. That's going to change hopefully soon, but in any event, that's a huge source of fuel, obviously oxygen, water, the other things that are very vital to our ability to explore the solar system. Okay, we still got 6 minutes or so, actually a little bit more than that. I think 2024 will be when Starship gets human rated. Boy, that's an ambitious goal. Maybe. I hope so. That would be awesome. Given the amount of time it took Crew Dragon to get human rated, it may take a little longer than that, but we'll see. Who knows? It depends on how successful it is. It depends on how quickly, we get it to be a reliable vessel. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Once again, I still have a few minutes. If we have a few more questions, I'm more than happy to field them. When will Elon first take a ride on his own Starship, or will it be a Crew Dragon first? I would say a Crew Dragon first. It's safer. And as he has said a number of times, once he's confident that SpaceX is going to do the things that he wants it to do if he dies. So, he really needs to see a lot of successful uses of the Starship and the Crew Dragon before he goes up himself. As opposed to Richard Branson, who is rumored to be amongst the first civilians who are going to be going up on the Virgin Galactic spaceship too, which, fingers crossed, I really hope gets to launch this year. I think that will be a momentous time for a company that has really struggled, and has experienced some awful tragedies. I really hope that they are successful. So in any event, but I think that he with his kids and that sort of thing, I think that he is comfortable with the vision of his company. Elon, not so much. I think that he is a little concerned that if he dies, his vision may go off track, that SpaceX may start saying more that why do we need to go to Mars? We can make more money doing A, B, or C. Going to Mars isn't as profitable. He doesn't want SpaceX to change its path. He wants to stay the course, and he's not going to be able to do that if he's dead. So that is a big thing that he needs to take into account, and I agree with him. I think that he does need to be careful. Okay, let's see here. Patreon endorsement was also called out in SpaceX Vision's recent SpaceX Starship as a space station episode. Okay, well, thank you. That video is gold and says it all. Point in with all the stream's ideas. Oh, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you letting me know about that. Ricker Bruden 62. If astronauts perish, will Elon's do we lose his vision? I don't think so. And here's why. We lost an astronaut with Virgin Galactic as a result of a pilot error, but still there wasn't a backup system in place to account for a pilot error, and that's why that man died. And I don't want to go any more into that, but in any event, and yet Virgin Galactic continued on. It's going to cause a delay if there are deaths. I think there's going to be, it's going to take time before we can get back on track. But I certainly hope that we don't lose people, especially in the early stages of things. But we could. It's dangerous when you put humans on top of an insane amount of explosive flammable liquid. That's just that's just dangerous. There's no way around it. So let's hope nothing happens. But if it does, then yeah, it will slow things down. But I don't think we'll lose Elon's vision. Okay, let's see. Do we see a multinational approach to the first shipping stuff into low Earth orbit? Will other nations swallow their pride and go for broke and paying SpaceX to send stuff up in Starship? My feeling is based on current experiences. Yes, whoever delivers the cheapest nations will go for. Yes, I agree with you, with the exception of perhaps the Russians and the Chinese. I think that they are going to be working very hard on creating their own reusable vessels, and that's where their focus is going to be. But with a lot of other countries, absolutely. I think that they'll be more than happy to do that. Okay, Elon flies on his private jet very often. Crew Dragon seems to be just as safe. Very good point, Johnny. A very good point. Maybe he will fly on Crew Dragon. Once again, keep in mind, it is only launched twice. Think of how many times that we launched the space shuttle before Challenger happened. So we still have, there's still some proof of concept that needs to go into all of this before we can say it's, really, really, really safe. We've still got a ways to go with anything that we're using right now. I think Crew Dragon is very safe, but at the same time, a lot of people might have said that about the space shuttle too before 1986. That was 6 years worth of, or 5 years rather, of using the space shuttle without a hiccup. And then all of a sudden disaster when nobody expected it. So in any event, you never can tell. You never can tell. Well, I am going to, I guess, wrap things up. Warhawk is typing something, so I'm going to, if it's another question, I'm going to allow him to have the last question. So in the meantime, by the way, I once again, please like and subscribe if you can. And if there's any way to support the channel, you know how to do it. But thank you so much for watching. I wonder if Elon ever rode the MiG to space. 700 viewers. My God, I can't believe it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't see it from here, so I didn't know. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to cut things off at this point. So until the Starship is complete, until the Super Heavy is complete, until we're ready to send the Starship into orbit and actually make this decision as to what the first practical use of the Starship shall be, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.